Hello, everybody. Great to have you here. As we were chatting about right before, it's great to see some of the names who were coming by today. Some existing customers, hopefully future customers as well. This is a topic that, as Sam mentioned, we've been discussing for the last 6 months with Sam, is how we get this series off the ground. But Kristen and I got to be honest, we've been working on this for years, and we've learned a lot. We're excited to sort of bring our baby to you today to talk about this thing that we have been working on and continue to work on. And it's important to understand that, this is the beginning of a conversation for the next 4 weeks. So this is session number 1. We're going to take you through a bit of a history lesson on how we got to where we are today. We'll talk about some things that we learned along the way, some things that we're excited about what the future holds. And then I hope you join us for the subsequent sessions, as we'll dive a bit deeper into some of the tools that we use, from like the database tools that we've created just for this type of project. We'll even take you through a transformation challenge where we show you some use cases that we've seen and solved for in the past, and give you the opportunity to apply your own skills and knowledge to, how would you solve those use cases? Because there's no one way to solve every problem. So excited to be able to work together with you and on that session. But today, a bit of a history lesson, how we got to where we are, and excited to take you through this content. Now, I'm not alone today. I'm joined by my lovely co-hosts, Kristen and Laura. Do you both want to go ahead and say hello?
Sure, I'll go just because my face is next to yours. I'm Kristen Kobsel. I've been at SADA for like almost 8 years now, which is crazy. So it's been really fun to watch SADA grow and Google grow and us all grow together. Definitely have been working on this particular topic for the last 3 years easily, as Chris said. So we're super excited to be here, and we're happy to have Laura with us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, excited to be here. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Luetta. I'm a Google Workspace consultant. So work closely with our partners and customers to help them onboard to Google Workspace. I've been with Google for over 15 years. So I know, like, the very beginning when we kind of built out our methodology and how, we're flexing, right? I see it very modular, and depending on what our customer needs are, we'll kind of like plug and play where needed. But super excited to be here to add color from my experiences and what I've been seeing out in the ecosystem. So again, happy to be part of this conversation. So thank you for the invite.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, you've been doing it longer than I have. So excited to have you here with us and bring some of that historical context and, see what you're seeing from the Google perspective and blend that with what we're experiencing from SADA. I didn't mention my title, by the way. I work in change management at SADA. So my role is to help users embrace change and figure out how do we point to the apple tree on the hill and say, that's where we're going, and get everybody aligned and marching towards that vision. So love the work that I do here at SADA. I wouldn't have it any other way. I love coming to work every day and solving challenges and focusing on helping people. That's what I try to remind myself every single day is how do I help someone? And if I do that today, then I've done my job. As far as our agenda goes for today's session, this is a bit what we'll be going through here. We'll start by defining what it means to go Google, what it's meant in a historical context, and what that means today, because I think it has changed immensely over the past 5 years. So we'll take you through a bit of that. And some of that has to do with maturing products. A lot has changed. Think about 5 years ago, 2019, 6 years ago, it was G Suite. Things were very different back then. So my, oh my, how the tools have changed and allowed us to do some really great work with them. Nowadays, we see a lot of customers going all in with Google. So excited to discuss, like, what does that mean? What does it mean to go all in with Google? It sounds a little scary. So we'll break that down for you and talk about what we see in a real world situation where, hey, if we're going Google, we're going all in. And then, of course, it must be in the back of your minds, because it's at the front of every conversation that we have with customers on these projects. What about the complex stuff? The OneNote, the Excel macros, the big data, the managing use cases. I mean, we've seen a lot, we learned a lot, we continue to learn a lot. This is a topic that we continue to grow ourselves and with our customers. We design solutions around. So a great conversation to have on that topic as well. And that'll kind of bring us to where we are now. I think that we are in a very exciting moment right now as we look at what does it mean to go all in with Google? What does it mean to embrace some work transformation and change the way that you're working? So excited to discuss that topic. And we'll end with what's next. So not only what's next for work transformation, but also what's next in this series. As I mentioned, it's a 4-part conversation. We hope that you're able to join us for all of these sessions. They will be recorded if you missed something, but we're excited to have you here and hope that you'll join us for the full journey. All right, with that being said, let's dive into the good stuff. So first, I wanted to start it off with a quote from our CEO, Joyce, who said, "Digital transformation is essential and it requires expertise." I think that this is true now more than ever. As we look at how do you differentiate yourself as a company or as a product that you're offering? How do you transform yourself if you're a 20-year-old business or if you're a 20-day-year-old business? Like how does that work? It requires intention and it requires expertise. I like to think about this as sort of like imagine yourself if you were a chef in a restaurant. You're thinking about offering a new dish. Do you start with the tools in the kitchen, or do you start with the vision of what that dish should be, what you want your customers to experience when they taste that for the first time? And I think what we've learned is for digital transformation, we should start with that experience. What do we want our people to feel? What do we want our people to think? How do we want them to go about their day-to-day? If you're a chef, how do we want them to experience that meal? And then work backwards to the technology that gets us to that vision, right? I think oftentimes we look at ROI on AI projects is really big right now. What makes a successful AI project versus what makes one that, hey, maybe doesn't return the level of success that we were hoping for? And I think it starts with where was the vision? Did we look at what we want to achieve and then work backwards to that technology? Or did we look at saying, hey, these tools are really cool, let's try them out. And then maybe we find the return, maybe we don't. So I think with digital transformation, that is such a pillar for what we do. Thinking about what is the end result? What is the thing we want to achieve? And then how do we work backwards and implement the technology and the strategies to help us get there? So any comments on this here, Kristen or Laura, before we move on?
No additional comments. You framed it perfectly with this chef analogy, which I absolutely loved.
Awesome. Also, for the audience that's here with us today, if you've got any questions or anything, feel free to put them in the Q&A, or if you have access to the chat room, happy to take a look at them there as well. Hope to make this interactive as we go along. We will also be holding about 15 minutes at the end of today's session to address any questions that have come up. So let's move along then to our first area of discussion here today, defining what does it mean to go Google? Now, I joined SADA back in April of 2019, which is not really that long ago on the calendar, but it feels like a lifetime ago. In looking at how does a company decide to go Google coming from a Microsoft shop, right? Maybe you're running, on-prem mail servers. Maybe you're already in Office 365. Like, what did that look like back then? And what have we learned from that experience? So we set this up in a couple of bullet points to discuss here as a group, and I'm excited to pass it over to my co-hosts here in a moment to hop in on any of these, but I wanted to frame this conversation from the perspective of what was the goal that we were trying to achieve back then, like circa 2019? What was the reality of that situation? What friction points did we encounter along the way? And what opportunities did that leave us? And how did we view those opportunities? Because I think our perspective on those opportunities was different then than it is now, which is a very important point that we can discuss. So let's start off with the goal here. The goal back then, if you talk to most of our customers, was mail, contacts, and calendar. Like that was SADA's bread and butter. We were experts. We were best in class. I'll say that I think we had the best team on the planet. And I'm not one to brag very often, but I truly believe that at getting folks over to mail, contacts, and calendar, right? This is a thing that we did with small, medium, large companies. It was sort of viewed as an IT change, like what's actually changing? Well, we're changing the way that we access our mail, right? We're going to gmail.com, logging in with our company email address. Calendar, same thing. Maybe we're enabling Drive. Most companies would enable Drive at that time, but you might not see like a a migration from SharePoint or a migration from on-prem file servers at that time. It was more of a let's turn on the tools and allow folks to use those. So the general consensus was just that, like, hey, this mail contacts and calendar solution, this collaboration suite looks really promising. Let's go ahead and start that in that direction, but let's kind of dip our toes in with mail contacts and calendar first. From my own experience, it would take maybe sometimes up to 3 years for a company to look at this and say, hey, wait a minute, we've been running 2 software suites for the last 3 years or so. Like, maybe we should focus on just Google. Like, that would take time back then. It wasn't an immediate thought that hopped into folks' minds of something that you could actually do when you go Google for the first time. Any notes on that one, Laura or Kristen?
Yeah, if I can add, our focus was just that, right? Thinking about the communication tools being business critical, right? And so moving or having that strong focus, making sure the users felt comfortable in the tools before actually moving mail, calendar contacts. And Drive and editors were a little bit of an afterthought, but it was also from a point of not overloading the users, meaning that change fatigue, right? So we wanted to get mail, calendar, contacts right. And then, hey, we have additional tools in the toolkit, right? Create net new content in Drive and editors, but hey, you know, we still have interoperability. You can continue to use your Microsoft tools as well. And I think what we're seeing now is that shift, right? Where it's important to go all in. To your point, Christopher, seeing the return on investment, right? Not having to pay for duplicate license types or other point solutions. It makes a lot of sense. So how do we, I guess, marry the approach, if you will, to allow for that kind of in today's world to basically accelerate it and build up the adoption of Drive and editors and have that true business transformation. So that's kind of where it stemmed from. Again, we didn't want to have that change fatigue for the users, right? Again, like what's near and dear to my heart is the user journey, the user experience, and making sure that we're thinking about them as we're rolling out these new tools. So yeah, that's kind of where what I wanted to say with regards to the why, right? We focus just on mail, calendar, and contacts early on. So.
It's definitely a more natural thing for folks to kind of latch on to. A lot of the terminology is the same. Like, hey, I understand the concept of working with my email. Now I'm going to do that through Google. But what the shift that you're mentioning is like, okay, but really working in Google Workspace opens up so many more opportunities. It can change the way that you work if you allow it to, if you embrace that within your team. Kristen, any notes before we move on to reality there?
No, I think I'm ready for the reality and the friction.
Well, we did see a bit of a reality check with these, right? Where, you know, working in the cloud was a new concept to a lot of folks. Like, where's my file server? Do I need to use a VPN? How do I access my resources and my tools? Is there an app that I download on my computer? These were questions that we still get today. A lot of folks are looking for that app. And, you know, with things like install as a shortcut, that's kind of a cool technology now through Chrome. But man, it was a different reality. It was just a different way of thinking. It was a different way of working. Having to go to Gmail for your corporate email was just this foreign thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's be honest, if we didn't go all in now with things like Drive for desktop and shared drives and SharePoint migrations, OneNote migrations, like all the things that we do now to get you into that cloud first mentality, those things help remove some of that clunkiness that was the reality of not going all in, right? That was the reality of only turning on the tools and migrating mail and contacts and calendars. Yeah. You would see things like, well, I've got this Microsoft file. How do I work with somebody that's, you know, in Google Workspace? I got to upload it. I got to add them as collaborators, those types of things. Where now we're going to migrate those things for you, right? We're going to transfer over permissions. We're going to copy over all these different files and put them in there for you, create shared drives and with all the appropriate permissions and things. So that it was a bit of a reality check for folks who might have been switching to the cloud for the first time, and it created some of that friction.
Yeah, I also think the reality at the time is people believed that through training, people would just naturally adopt the tools.
Mhm.
I really think they equated that training and knowledge of said tools would create the adoption of them.
Yeah.
And you'll see in the later slides where we are circa 2025, that misperception and the reality didn't really align.
And I think that speaks to the question that we got in the Q&A. I
Yes.
see an anonymous writer asked, first-time caller, long-time listener, what measures were taken to address user resistance in Google Workspace? And at the time, we really saw it as an education gap. Like, if only people knew how great these tools were and what you could accomplish, like then people would embrace them and people would work with them. We saw it as addressing the educational need. And I want to be clear, there is still very much an educational need. Like,
Yes.
we are having conversations every single day about, did you know that you can actually open a Microsoft Excel file using Google Sheets and you don't need to have Excel downloaded on your computer? Like, these are still conversations that need to happen. They're very important conversations. If we want to get to that apple tree on the hill, if we want the chef to be able to serve that dish in the dining room, education is a key component of that. We've also learned that there's a whole lot of other components of this that we didn't quite take into account back then, because we were so focused on how do we train people, how do we educate people, how do we help people see that it's worth getting over the hump and embracing these tools because of the opportunity that it provides. I want to mention one more thing here, then I'll open it up to Kristen and Laura for any final notes on this slide. This concept of Transformation Labs was one that's been an interesting journey over the last few years. Transformation Labs, as you know very well and dear, Laura, was a key part of the strategy back then. Like, how do we look at a workflow and figure out, okay, what's happening? What are the key requirements of this workflow? Who are the key stakeholders? Let's get them in a room. Let's whiteboard out this problem of, hey, what are the different workflows that are ripe for transformation? And then let's pick one and target that and work through that. And that spirit lives on in the way that we address use cases today. But I would say that the Transformation Labs, it was great for that time, but I think we've grown a lot and we've learned a lot about how to address use cases, gather them, and help the business truly look at this from a use case driven perspective.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I think Transformation Labs, at a minimum, one, inspire the users to identify new ways of working on their own, right? As we kind of talk through the art of the possible, right, with the tools, but it also provided us the ability to gather all the use cases and prioritize them based on, impact, complexity, what's easy to solve for, like now, or what have you. And through that, we could build a roadmap of, okay, what are we going to tackle first, right? And so we would create, it could be 3, 6, 12 months of time of like really digging deep and helping transform those use cases. So that's where it helped. And I think now we've gotten better at identifying those use cases and maybe doing that business transformation a little bit more upfront, right? Again, I mentioned earlier that we're seeing this kind of accelerate, if you will. It was more of an afterthought, like get comfortable with your communication tools, then let's have you dive into collaboration tools and figure out your business workflows and transform those. So I think now we're at a point where we need to accelerate those activities to really see that return on investment, right? And get quicker at that adoption. Kind of thinking of back like historically, right? And even today, right? We can do data migration. It's important to bring all your data over, right? Especially if we're talking about M365. We're bringing everything over, which is great. But what it also does, it brings over kind of those habits that you built, right? And so a lot of folks want to continue using Workspace the way they were, working in 365. So that's just if we think about the training and communication, it's making the end users aware of those opportunities, how to redesign their mailbox, not to be a slave to their mailbox, right? It's all, but where are those opportunities? So it's that productivity training that's super important for end users, because from a technical perspective, that data migration, again, you're kind of, doing a lift and shift. So behaviors come with that as well. So I guess maybe just to call out that that productivity training is key, and how to do things differently in your new Google Workspace environment.
You brought up so many points that I could dive into and talk through the next hour on, but I wanted to call attention to two things that you said, which were one, the enabling technology can sometimes bring over these old habits, which the way that I convey this topic to folks is enabling the technology alone is not enough. We have to focus on what, it comes back to that apple tree on the hill. What is our strategy? What are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to create a more collaborative environment? And if so, how do we get there? What do we need to change about the way we're working today in order to achieve that? And that comes back to use cases, and that goes through that whole thing. But also you mentioned this idea of self-starting, of a transformation lab as a way of jumping off point of saying, hey, wait a minute, I can prototype things on my own. I can try to solve these things on my own. And that is such a key part of the strategy too, empowering folks with the education and the knowledge of where we're going to say, hey, you can probably, achieve some transformation on your own, change the way your team is working by doing something as simple as, hey, instead of sending out an Excel file, how about we share a Google Sheet next time? Or something as complex as hey, this macro was designed to do this specific thing in our team. Let's take a look at one, what was the purpose of the macro? Do we even need a macro to do that in Google Workspace today? And two, if we still do, then who on our team can upscale and help to convert that macro using tools like Gemini for macro conversion, which it is incredible at macro. If you have not used Gemini for VBA macro to AppScript macro, it's incredible. But also, other tools just working through this workflow. It doesn't need to be something crazy, just some knowing what the vision is for your team, for your company, and then bringing that down into the granular level of, well, what does that mean for our work that we're doing here today? And I want to be clear, there are certainly some processes and some tools that are just not Google friendly yet, and that's okay. What we like to help our customers understand is that we want to help you embrace a Google first mindset, not a Google only mindset. There are some things that, hey, they'll need to take some time. They're on a longer roadmap. Maybe for your SAP on-prem, you got to migrate to SAP HANA first before you can get into a Google-friendly way of working with that data. And that's okay. That's fine. Let's look at what that roadmap is. How do we get there? How do we take a Google-first approach today in order to, get to that apple tree on the hill? We are having so much fun talking about all these topics. I want to move us along a little bit here, just so we're staying on time. That self-empowerment of solving your own use cases, that is only possible because Google continues to invest in this technology. Think about, when I put this slide together, it was like going back in a time machine, thinking about how have things changed from 2019 all the way through to today. And my goodness, how the needs of the world and what we've all gone through in the past 6 years have driven and accelerated this technology forward so fast and so much into what we see today. So I just wanted to call attention to a few things that stood out to me as they relate to work transformation specifically. So G Suite becoming Google Workspace, I mean, just looking at that, that mindset shift of this is a way of working, diving deeper into these are professional work tools, doubling down on the capabilities of those tools, the enhancement in the technologies that those tools run on, that initial investment was so huge for us. We saw the smart canvas come in and this integrated workspace of having chat everywhere, having meet everywhere. And then all of us going to remote, right? We all woke up one day, we all had to go home and work from home for a while. And that, hey, if you were on Google Workspace, that probably wasn't that big of a deal. But if you were not on Google Workspace and now a lot of your employees are working remotely for the first time, Well, now it's time to dive in and invest in some of this technology, right? Like, how do we get folks modern video conferencing software? How do we get folks working collaboratively in a shared document instead of sending version 1, version 2, version 3 final around the version vortex? Like, how do we get folks into this collaborative environment? Sometimes for the very first time, depending on how your company had been operated up to that point. We see key investments in Google Meet and Google Chat. I mean, think about that time frame from like 2020 to 2022 of like that product. It is just night and day between what Meet and Chat were back then into what they are now. Like, incredible. The amount of just the increase in attendees, but also the tools that we have as presenters and as folks using these tools in a business perspective. Like, really great advances to see there. And of course, now this just continues with Gemini. I mean, the day that Gemini became integrated with a Google Workspace license, like that is a day marked in time here at SADA. Like, our customers were so excited to see how now they have access to these tools. And some of them like, okay, well now what? It's like when a young puppy gets a hold of a toy and it's like so excited, but it doesn't know what to do with it. That was a lot of folks' experience on at that time. So Laura, Kristen, I invite just open it up to you. Any key moments in the past for how these tools have evolved that stand out for you?
Oh yeah, I did all those Live in 5s in 2020 that got all the people who were not yet using some of these tools in like 5 days. And then once they were there, it was just a rapid succession from there. So yeah, that was a pivotal moment in the history of our entire end user experience to this point.
There's a question from Anonymous here. Which product advances are making work transformation easier, removing barriers? Well, there's a few there. I think, oh my goodness, Gemini is a big one. Like we just talked about those macros, like converting a VBA macro, you kind of had to be like a citizen developer, right? Like, so there was a person on your team. Think about it. You probably have in your own company, maybe there's a macro that's been there for 20 years. And like the person who wrote that, they don't even work here anymore. What do we do with those?
Yes.
Without a tool like Gemini, that becomes a very hard question. And now we need to find other folks to support us in like recreating that macro, rewriting that macro. So where we see Gemini integrated with these products even for like large data analysis, like can we plug into that data instead of like opening it in a spreadsheet? I think that's another key technological advancement and a mindset shift for us as well, where in the past we look at, okay, where's the data today? And then how do we migrate it to something that's more Google friendly? But now with tools like Gemini and tools like, Connected Sheets, for example, and other Google's data tools, we can leave some of that in place and connect to it and run analysis. I mean, that was the big unlock for me when Agent Space came out and now Gemini Enterprise. Hey, we can connect to that data. We can run analysis on it. We can ask questions of it without having to download a 35 megabyte spreadsheet and then, try to upload that back into Google. Like there's this whole process that we used to have to go through. That process, I'm excited about what can become of that with tools like Gemini Enterprise.
And I like the question in general, but what I think advances a lot of it the most and makes it easier is the way all of these integrate together. I think if they didn't integrate together and they sat by themselves, it would be more difficult to adopt. But as all of these objects that are within the workspace ecosystem, including advanced workspace, and then when you do get into like GCP, BigQuery, all of that, like all of it is interconnected, and that's what makes the entire product and suite itself so powerful. And that really what takes us into like our ultimate next phase, next step of where we are today.
Laura, any notes on that one before we?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with you both. I think it's just the work that we're doing to integrate all of our services together, I think is what's key. If I look at this question and it's like, okay, well, what's making it easier? Again, it's that integration. But two, users can find potential solutions, right? Using Gemini, just asking, questions on, what's the best path to do XYZ, might get various answers back, but just the tools are at your fingertips now, which makes it, I believe, easier, right? Once we get end users to realize that, it's easy to get that answer for themselves, I think maybe with a little coaching or a little guidance, they'll get more comfortable, right? And start identifying those, start identifying their own solutions, right? And how do they rethink things? I think that's one thing I always would kind of break it down, right? As we're thinking through a use case, it's like, okay, what's truly the objective? Why are you doing this process today, right? What's the goal of this process? What are you trying to accomplish? And then, in a clean slate, then identifying, okay, how can we do this better? How can we be a little bit more efficient potentially? And faster, what have you, or, pull in all the necessary stakeholders as needed, right? To work in this new workflow process, et cetera. So I think that's what's important, and everybody has access to it, right, at their fingertips.
Yeah, I think your question of what is the workflow or what is this use case trying to accomplish? It's like a microcosm of that chef's entree that I was talking about before in every single use case that we see within a business. And it's such a simple yet powerful question because it challenges then everything that comes after that. What are we trying to accomplish? What is the purpose of this use case? Well, I need to verify the prices in this database. Okay, we need to verify the prices in this database. Looking at that as the apple tree on the hill that we're marching towards, then lets us challenge, okay, well, what technology are we using to do that today? And if we take the technology out of that, what are the requirements of this use case? In order to verify that price in the database, what are the requirements of the use case? And then what technology can we use to support those requirements? A lot of folks, myself included, for years have looked at this as well, what does the technology do and how do we replace the technology? But the mindset shift has to be, what is the thing that we're trying to accomplish? What are the requirements of that thing? And then what technology can we use to support that? And oftentimes you'll find it's not an easy thing. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, just take this, it'll be great. It's hard. Those are hard questions to answer. Those are hard things to implement. But having tools like this also allow those citizen developers to then go and solve their own challenges, solve their own little use cases. I was talking with a person at an office hour yesterday at one of the customers I'm currently working with. And they brought up, hey, I'm this person I was speaking to, she supports folks who develop macros. So a lot of folks, citizen developers, VBAs, she helps them convert it to AppScript. But what she's worried about are the folks who don't come to her, that don't come to the office hours, the ones that are trying to figure it out on their own. Will they just struggle in the dark with this, or will there be a way for them to support themselves? And I think with tools like Gemini, not only can you convert the macro, but also you can ask Gemini, is there a way to do this in a workspace that doesn't require this code? It just connects all of these things together in a better way. So tools like this, things of this nature, have allowed companies to look at work transformation and think, okay, well, if I'm going to go Google, then I'm going to go all in. And Kristen, I think you had some notes on this topic.
Yeah, so I think we found that once people were moving onto workspace for whatever reason, economy or otherwise, people saw oh my gosh, we are spending way too much money on a plethora of IT applications that some of them all do the same thing. Why are we doing that? So this is the trend we are seeing, where a lot of people are already on Google, and now they're at the space of why are we paying for all of these other productivity tools? We need to go all in Google. So if we're going to go Google, let's go all in. In addition, we are seeing a much higher trend of customers that are choosing to do a mail, calendar, contacts, and they're just now saying, I'm going all in on all the things instead of waiting the 3 years. we end up with customers that will do mail counter contacts, SharePoint migration, file migration, and an Office reduction all in one because they're just feeling like they're ready and need the change. So this is where we are today, and this is what we are seeing. Anybody have anything to add to that one?
I was just going to say that, kind of on the flip side, we've had, there's flexibility, right? Deploy the services that you want to deploy. Every organization is different. So on the flip side is we've had customers only deploy drive-in editors for whatever reason, right? Maybe that their end customers are Google Workspace customers and it just makes collaboration easy, or, it's companies that are providing end users tool choice, which I think that's fine here at Google. We kind of work that way, but we're seeing those folks say, "Oh no, I need to go all in." Right? Why am I still dealing with MailCat like in a different system? Let's just go all in Google. So I just wanted to chime in there and say that it could be kind of like the opposite of that, right?
Yeah.
Our drive-in editor folks that are realizing, oh, let's do the communication tools as well. And maybe through COVID, right? Some, they went to a point solution, like a Zoom or what have you, and realized I've got the capability in my enterprise license today. Why am I not using it, right? So it's kind of going through those activities of the going all in, if you will, Kristen. I think you said that really well.
Yeah, so let's talk about what that looks like then today and what we're seeing. So we talked about how we defined going Google in 2019 and the big shift that happened. So now we're seeing that goal of fully embracing the Google Workspace collaborative platform, really wanting to change the way we work in order to enhance workflows. Most importantly, save money is usually where people fall in. And also then enable new technologies. Those last two are the trends and reasons and visions we tend to see the most. One is obviously the saving of the money, but two, if you want to use like an agent space or something where your data is located, it all has to be in one space to utilize AI. And if it's not to some degree, then it's difficult to utilize all the various tools. So enabling new technologies have become part of the forefront. Again, not saying it's not possible to keep your data dispersed, but just saying this is the trend we're seeing. Customers are now seeing going Google as a full workspace shift rather than an IT change. This was significant. Getting the business on board so that it was not an IT only change, but an initiative the whole company is looking at, forces everyone to change their mindset around what they're doing. Because forever, people just were like, well, my department will just pay for it. So if we go back to how we used to do different office removals, it was department by department. We've found that's really not as feasible as everyone thought it was going to be. And that shifts us a little bit to the reality of every department interacts with every other different department. We are an intricate web of, let's say, Christmas lights thrown into a massive garage over years and years and years. You're not going to be able to pull one strand out and think that it doesn't affect the rest of them. So our reality forced us to change the way that we approached all of our office removals or going Google type projects. So people did generally avoid the change because they knew it was going to impact business critical work. Now we figured out we need to find new ways to do that. And the education is still important, but now it's more urgent. Chris, do you want to add anything to the goal or reality there?
No, I think the goal is somehow becoming the reality now of like our goal is to improve the way that we're working. And honestly, it's not about just like how do we do spreadsheets. It's about like how do we provide value to our customers? Like how do we invest our time and our resources appropriately to make sure that our employee experience is the best, our customer experience is the best, the friction of getting from concept to product is it requires really good tools, and I think that Google provides those tools, and it's easier for folks to see now that hey, if you're gonna dip your toes in, like let's just do the whole thing. Like let's just go all in on this vision, because in order to get to the thing that we want to achieve, the reality is it's going to impact every team, like you said, Kristen, every way that we're working. And I saw the question about the human in the loop. I do want to get to that, but I'll hold off until we get to our Q&A section, because I know that we've got a few more slides to get through as well.
Yes. I think the friction point is today is, like Chris said earlier, we are not saying that Google is the end all be all solution for all things. Some of the workflows that we have seen over the course of a couple of years have been crazy. And we were like, yeah, that's not something that was meant for Google to do. And we go back to asking the question, what is the goal of your overall process? And how do we talk about meeting that goal with the technology versus anything else? So we do know that Google Workspace is not a direct replacement for everything. And teaching people that we're not here to equate Excel to Sheets is a forever and all just continual mantra that we say in every single project that we go through. Sheets is not meant to replace Excel, and we know that. The opportunity there is really that unified platform does unlock immense different opportunities. Again, getting to take full advantage of the tools like Gemini, and then the tools like even advanced Google Workspace, like AppSheet. There's some really cool stuff that we've created within AppSheet. But you just have new tools available to you. So there's lots of different opportunities there. And then you do alternatively open up additional opportunities if your organization happens to be on GCP as well. Anything else to add to these couple before we jump to the next slide?
Ready to go.
So how do we do that? Chris, tell us about how we do that.
Yeah, so we could spend the entire hour on this slide alone. I promise we're not going to, because I want to be respectful of your time, and I know that we've got some questions to get to as well. I've highlighted a few things here that we take a different approach to in a work transformation project than we would in, say, like a mail contacts calendar project or a drive only project or something. So I'll talk through a couple of these, and then we'll move on to the next slide for the sake of time here. The first thing starts with that executive sponsor engagement. I mean, the difference between a project who has an executive that stands up and says, this is the apple tree in the hill that we're marching towards, and they can articulate that and people can see it and people can get behind it, like that truly continues to be the biggest driver of success of these projects. Mm-hmm. If you've got somebody that can point to that apple tree and say, this is where we're going, let's go everybody, get everybody motivated, get everybody going, like that is irreplaceable in a work transformation project. As far as analysis goes, we do analysis a bit differently. We've learned a lot of lessons. I will not speak of the amount of Google Sheets spreadsheets that we broke by asking everybody what their use cases are. And now we approach that differently. Now we have a database tool that we use. We have this concept of process leads. Some companies might call them like business primes or something similar, where, hey, these are your points of contact to understand how your folks are working. Like, let's get those use cases in here. We've also clearly identified there's a difference between a business use case versus a technological use case. Like, some systems might require an Excel integration. That is a technological use case, whereas a business use case might be something like, this report goes out every Wednesday and it contains this information, and I currently use Excel to do that. Very different use cases there, right? Different ways that we would approach solving those problems. Different ways that we would put an action plan together to address both of those. And of course, our process leads, a big part of that, understanding, hey, what are those use cases? What are my folks dependent upon? How are they dependent upon these tools? Are they become a part of our project team and help us to interface with the folks who are maybe those citizen developers or have those use cases that they are key stakeholders in. And then, of course, our job aids, training materials. This is all very specific to the use cases that we're solving for. A lot of custom material in these types of projects. And of course, we have to measure everything, right? Defining success criteria, key difference here in these types of projects, because we like to define success with our key stakeholders and with our executives based on what we know about what's out there, right? Based on what we know about your environment and what you would like to achieve. It's not a number that we set for you or a customer sets for us. It's something we work together on to figure out what is actually achievable for the vision that you set forth for yourself and for your team. And then on another session, we'll dive into that licensing use case dashboard, but just wanted to call attention to some of the key differences in the way that we approach this strategy, even though a lot of this terminology is likely familiar to you if you've gone through a Going Google project per se. Next up, and I'll just run through. I see Zach. Zach has something urgent to ask. Zach, I'll open it up to you just in a moment when we get through. We've got 2 more slides to get through here. The first one, what about that complex stuff? My goodness, there's some complex stuff out there. You're thinking about OneNote, you're thinking about macros, you're thinking about Microsoft Access databases, Visio use cases. We've learned a lot, we've seen a lot, we've built a lot for these. We know that there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And we take a tailored approach to these for different customer situations. We've got a OneNote migration tool that Kristen and our team has worked incredibly hard to build and continue to build and deploy with our customers. We've got a use case database for tracking and understanding, like, what are the use cases, who's affected by them. If I, like Kristen's Christmas light analogy, if I take out this bulb and replace it, like, what other strands does that impact and influence? And of course, all of this stems from data strategy and governance, like working with your data team to understand what is the data strategy? How does your team govern data and govern the tools that you use? And then how do we make sure that the transformations that we're doing, the use cases that we are mitigating, align with that strategy? How should folks report on data? How should folks interact with data? What should those permissions be? How do people get access to things? How do people work with different data? Like, all of this data strategy needs to be in place at the beginning so that when we go out and we work with use cases in the business, we are aligned with what your data strategy is. Very important key part to have up front.
Yeah, when we talk about complex stuff, I think on everyone's mind when they say we're removing any sort of Microsoft Office, it's like, oh my gosh, what about my Excel? I download this stuff from this system and I manipulate it and then I send it out. What am I supposed to be doing? And that's where your data strategy is absolutely critical, because a lot of times we're finding companies don't even know that there are some other departments that are downloading entire parts of data out of a safe system into Excel and then manipulating it and emailing it, which isn't necessarily safe either. So we spend significant time working with your data team. If you don't have a data strategy or governance, we have a whole data team and governance team that can help you with that. But it is absolutely critical to any of these types of projects, because the most concerned one is Excel. We know that Excel is very difficult, but again, it's getting to the question that Laura asked around, what are you using Excel for, and are you supposed to be using it for that reason? It's a great opportunity for work transformation to also set some really solid security standards and data governance standards within your organization mixed in with this effort. It's really, really good for that. With the OneNote conversion, we know OneNote is very special to many, many people. So we did. I went to the app development team and we worked together to create a solution so that we could bring those over in a either PDF format, which converts the best, to be honest. And then you can always convert that PDF to a Google Doc and then use it continually. We know that OneNote is special. We're not claiming that Google Workspace is a replacement for OneNote, but you can still use your notes once you get them over there and use Gemini and whatnot to look at them. So the complex stuff is what we've spent a lot of time building, looking at, finding solutions for. What you will find at SADA is we don't like to tell people, no, we can't do that. We're going to try to find solutions where we can, and ones that make sense.
I think with the OneNote thing, just one last quick note here before we move on. Something I've seen with success for folks with the OneNote conversions is a lot of what's in OneNote. It's very important that we have historical access to those things. And that's why our tool can take massive amounts of OneNote files that your business may have, convert them to PDF, put them in people's Google Drives, and appropriately, it's a really incredible thing that happens. But it is for historical use. It's for looking back and confirming that I didn't lose the data that I had in OneNote. And where the work transformation comes in is, let's talk about new ways of working using the Google Workspace tools. The things that you get access to using tools like Smart Canvas and the ability to connect these multiple products together. Like, honestly, it changes the way that you can work and opens up some really exciting possibilities for you. But we recognize that the stuff that was in OneNote It's important for historical context. We got to get that over there. And then once it's there, we feel secure that we're not going to lose anything. Now we've built the trust to be able to look at new ways of working, look at new ways of taking notes and creating content. Last slide here, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. And I'll offer for my co-presenters to add any notes before we do that. But where we are now is just a really exciting future that's in front of us. So these tools, this process, it's grown a lot. We've learned a lot over the past few years. We're still looking at, and the most important lesson that we've learned again is that executive sponsorship, saying, what's the apple tree on the hill? What is that thing? How can we motivate people to get marching towards that? And that allows us to then take the Google first approach, which isn't always a Google only approach. Like Kristen said, there's old systems that, hey, this requires Excel, that's okay. But let's see what that goal is, we'll see what that vision is, and then see how we can all march towards that together. Now, our next sessions have so much content to cover. We will cover next steps in a moment here for what comes next, but before we get there, let's address some of these questions. So, oh, I'm sorry, Kristen and Laura, any notes to add before we open it up for the questions?
I'm good with the questions.
Yeah, we can move on to questions.
Awesome. So the first one I see is from Anonymous, who writes, with Gemini Speed, the risk shifts to unvalidated output. What is the human-in-the-loop governance, or what human-in-the-loop governance is crucial to ensure AI-generated solutions are factually validated, contextually aligned, and deliver demonstrable business value? And it's funny, I'm actually taking a course on this right now, professional development course. And so you sound a bit like my professor. This sounds like a module question that I might have to answer this week. But yeah, it's honestly, look, I would look at what is the impact of this AI agent? Like, is there risk to our business, our employees, our customers? And if so, how are we validating this tool before we allow it to go and overwrite something in a database per se? I think a lot of times, we might ask the AI to help us get 80% of the way there and then take the other 20% across the line, is what I'm seeing. Laura, Kristen, excited to open it up to you and see if you're seeing the same thing or something maybe a bit different there.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely accurate, Chris. There's, some end user training, right? Like if you're using gemini.google.com or, look at the references. Are these references that are either coming from, a trusted source or maybe not? Maybe it's, maybe you go down a rabbit hole in a Reddit thread or something. So anyway, it's that end user education of validating the references and not just taking it for what it is, but doing your homework. Are these references accurate from an accurate source? So that's a great question. So it's just being mindful, right, of how you're using these AI tools.
Yeah, I'm excited about Ekaterina. I think that's how you say your name. If I said that wrong, I'm so sorry. But I'm excited about your question around elaborating on work transformation phase happening after the migration itself, why the user persona and cases are not explored before the migration in order to find the solution ahead of the shift itself. Love the question. We tend to find that you can only discover as many use cases as people know. And a lot of times we don't know what we don't know until we've done some version of any migration. Plus, you kind of need your data in one location so people know how to begin to work with the tools. A lot of our approach is education. Let's train the general population on how to solve for those lower hanging fruits so that then your project team focuses on more of the complex ones. We do use user personas, but you'll find that user persona between possibly a mail calendar contact migration may be different from a work transformation, transformation. So it's not to say you can't do it, you use the effort, but you wouldn't necessarily, it may not be the same. Chris, thoughts?
Yeah, I think for me, from a change management perspective, there's this sense of urgency that happens when the change is right in front of you, of okay, this is really happening for me. I'm getting access to these tools. This milestone is coming up. And so I see it all. I see it all the time in my own work where people begin to pay attention when it's like right in front of them. And it's hard to get people's bandwidth. It's hard to get people's attention ahead of time. But if we can point to this thing and say, hey, this is the milestone that's coming up, then we tend to get more involvement, more responses, more thoughtful input. And that's not to say you can't start gathering data ahead of time. Like there's never a wrong time to start gathering data. It's just that sense of urgency that instills a willingness to like, hey, we got to make some changes here.
Well, and also we talked a little bit about change fatigue before. Like people are not ready to hear what they're just not ready to hear. And if you're throwing so much at someone at one time, they can only look at so many things. So if you're trying to do mail calendar, context, file migration, and work transformation, you're going to end up missing something anyway, because the focus is split between 3 different things. We talk about all of our inability to not truly multitask. That would be one instance where you really can't do it. You'd almost need a very dedicated focus work transformation team on that. So again, not to say you can't start the discovery on some of the things, but you're not going to get that full attention until you get to that point. Hope that answered your question. What tool do we have to migrate OneNote to Google? Is it available? Absolutely available from SADA. We custom built it internally. So if you have an interest in a OneNote conversion and want to learn more about that, reach out to Samantha Rowe. We would love to help you with that problem.
I wanted to go back to one of the questions around Gemini. I think my engineer would, I don't know, wring my neck is the right word, but like give me a stern talking to if I didn't mention how Google's using retrieval augmented generation in the tools that we have available to us. So like when you're using Gemini, for example, and you're logged in with your work account, using the @ symbol for like @Drive or @Gmail makes sure that the responses that it's given you are based in the reality of what you have to work with within your Google Workspace environment. When we talk about a tool like Gemini Enterprise, then we add on third-party external things like, well, maybe there's some information in other connectors, other third-party tools like SharePoint or something else that we can use to augment the response to make sure that it's more grounded in our actual business use cases here. So just wanted to make sure I had that note in there before I get any angry chats from any engineers. Not that they would, they're all great. I love my engineers.
Okay, I do know we've got 2 minutes. I want us to touch on what's next.
Sure.
Zach, if you can.
Did we get to Zach's question? I'm really concerned about Zach here.
I know, me too. Could you pop that in the Q&A while we finish the reading of what's next so we can be mindful of time, and then we'll work to get yours answered last.
Okay, so what's next for this crash course? As I mentioned, today was a bit of history lesson, right? You think about where we've been, and hopefully you saw some comparisons in your own business of, hey, what have the last 5 years been like in our own transformational journey? This session is not designed to exist in a bubble. We've got 4 sessions. We're going to be approaching this to session 2 rather on like, how do we look at licenses? What is that data strategy that Kristen was talking about? Like, how do we actually establish that? The good, the bad, and the ugly of transforming, always a fun topic to discuss there. And then we're going to bring in some customer examples of how we've seen this work and some real world use cases that we've seen transformed at different businesses. So I want to thank my co-hosts. I want to thank Sam, all the folks that have been here and along for the ride, folks that ask questions. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate the time together and looking forward to going on this 4-week journey with you. Are there any questions that we have left unaddressed?
There's one from Steven. Is there third-party tool integration for Smartsheet and Gemini? I think I'd want to know a bit more around what you're trying to do versus guiding you to an actual tool or integration. So that would be my best response, Stephen. I'm sorry. I think I need more context around what are you trying to do. And I think that goes back to what we've been saying is, what are you trying to accomplish between Smartsheet and Gemini? If you're trying to see if Gemini can be used within Smartsheet, Smartsheet is technically outside of the Google ego space. So I would say there would not be an actual integration between the two of them. And we had already answered our OneNote to Google conversion. You can certainly reach out to Sam Rowe if you are interested in utilizing our custom built tool. We love it. It's great. It's super helpful. So please reach out to her.
I just want to say thank you for joining us today. We are at time, so we hope to see you next week for week 2. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and we will see you all soon. Take care.